Grossi Posse Packer Nation. Welcome to another episode of Packcast, the podcast where you don't have to be a Packers fan, but it sure does help. I'm your host, Tom Grossi, and we have made it over into the NFC, the conference that, let's be honest, we all care a little bit more about than the AFC. I'm just being honest here. You know, as Packers fans and Vikings fans that send me death threats, we can all agree, at least, that the NFC is better. So, we're going to start off with the NFC East, which actually I had to completely rewrite my breakdown and research from the Redskins because they suffered a terrible, terrible loss in Darius Geis, their second-round pick for running back, as it seems like he's tore his ACL and is out for the season. So, just completely heartbreaking for the Redskins and definitely will negatively impact their season, as they were definitely going to be leaning on him and would have definitely been a great weapon for Alex Smith. But before we get into the logistics, let's pay some bills and thank our sponsor, DoubleDriveSports.com. Now, for those who have already joined the site, you're already in the running to win that 55-inch Sony TV for the preseason. If you didn't, I'm sorry you missed out for the preseason. People are already sending me messages, and that it's a pretty damn cool site, I have to say. Like I said, I would not be promoting this unless I'm using it myself, and I'm going to beat all of you for that damn TV. But fear not, because if you join before the regular season, so you still got about 3 weeks, you could join the public league, so you don't even need any friends like me, because I don't have any. So you could join the public league, and at the end of the year, you win this. Look, this is called the Hopper Trophy. And I didn't know I wanted it, but now I do. That behemoth is going to go right here. Right here. And I'm going to show it off to my mom, to my dad, to my dog, and any stranger on the street, because that is a beautiful, beautiful trophy. So you could win that. So join DoubleDriveSports.com today. Log on before preseason's over. It's super duper easy. You just need an email. So go ahead and do that. They're a great sponsor for us, and we're going to help them out. And it's a great site. It's a lot of fun. There's live scores. You can chat with your friends, and it's just an overall good time. So that being said, let's dive into the NFC East. Now, looking at last year, this is where our Super Bowl champions came from. Thank God, because let's be honest. We had to choose between either the Patriots, which gross, or if the Eagles didn't win the NFC Championship game, God, the Vikings could have won the Super Bowl. And I don't know if this show would have been able to continue with the amount of trolling that would have gone on here. So thankfully, the Philadelphia Eagles won. They didn't burn down Philly as much as I would have anticipated, which I'm a little disappointed about. I kind of was expecting a little bit more chaos. But the Eagles finished 13-3, the Cowboys 9-7, the Redskins 7-9, and I think the most shocking team, or one of them of the NFC last year, was the Giants, finishing 3-13. As we talked about in the AFC East video when we were talking about the Jets, I don't think anyone could have predicted that the Jets would have had a better record than the Giants. But with the loss of Odell Beckham Jr. and Eli Manning not throwing footballs well, that was a great sentence, that happens. So let's jump into the Eagles. Now, before we get into like the draft and the nitty-gritty, a former Packers player was picked up by the Eagles. Now, he was pretty good at blocking, really not great at catching, except one time, and that is tight end Richard Rodgers, which we will always remember him for the Hail Mary in Detroit. So, Richard, I hope you have a phenomenal year. I hope you have a great career, and I love you for that. Because that's one of the highlights of my Packers fandom, was jumping up and down at midnight as they beat the Detroit Lions. And I'm sure Lions fans, you're super stoked about that too. But Richard Rodgers isn't going to be their main guy, as they drafted tight end Dallas Goedert in the draft. And from the preseason, the guy looked pretty darn good. However, their defense, they definitely did lose some guys over the offseason. They lost Kendricks, Curry, Patrick Robinson. So their defense isn't the same, but I think they're still going to be one of the better defenses. I think still a top 10 defense within the league. The big question I find is going to be that offense. And the reason being is because it all is going to circle around Carson Wentz. Now, after Carson Wentz went down, there were very few people, including myself, that thought they were going to do anything in the playoffs. I thought every single team that they were going to play was going to beat them. That being said, Nick Foles was able to put that entire team on his shoulders and just go and put out 3 amazing games and just win a Super Bowl. So great for him. The question is now, are they going to need Nick Foles again? There's nearly not a great timetable on Carson Wentz. Reports are showing that he's frustrated with the lack of throwing he's able to do because his doctors aren't letting him. So there is a big question mark if is he going to be ready for the first game of the season. If I had to look at all the information right now, I would say he's not going to be ready, which means they are going to lean on Nick Foles again. And at that point, you just got to hope that he just wins you a couple games. You know, if Wentz is out for like the first 5 games of the season, you know, hopefully he can win, 3 or 4 of those games, and I think Eagles fans would be pretty happy with that. But it's going to be interesting to see if Nick Foles can make a repeat of what he did last year. It's definitely going to be intriguing, but I think the Eagles definitely should be one of the better teams coming out of that division. Now, for the Dallas Cowboys, who fell flat on down to earth last year, they made some changes. First of all, they lost Dez Bryant, who is still yet to sign. There's talks about him going to the Browns, which, let me be honest, that'd be a pretty interesting offense. You got guys like Josh Gordon, Landry, and Dez Bryant. That'd be pretty potent. So that'd be interesting. But they instead signed Allen Hurns from the Jaguars. The Jaguars, again, losing 2 of their big receivers. But Allen Hurns is never, he had that great season a couple years ago, but ever since then, it's kind of fallen off a little bit. So I don't know how potent he's going to be. They shored up that defense a little bit as well by drafting Leighton Vander Esch, the linebacker. They also picked up another wide receiver in the draft, Michael Gallup, who was active during the first preseason game. But the big thing about Dak Prescott is obviously the sophomore slump that he went through last year. But he also not only lost Dez Bryant, but he lost his main target, Jason Witten, who decided to retire after playing football for 650 years. So Jason Witten now being gone, that's a big loss for that offense. So the good news for them is that they get Ezekiel Elliott back. So Zeke, not suspended this year, doesn't have to appeal or anything like that. So Ezekiel Elliott will be back. So they're hoping that really that offense could just rely on him, and Dak Prescott can just go back to making the occasional throws that he needs to. Because I want to say that Dak Prescott was kind of exposed last year a little bit of kind of being a meh quarterback. Now, could have just had a bad year, but it's interesting to see with one of the better offensive lines this year if they're going to be able to bounce back. I think they will. They are pretty good in the pass rush, but they definitely need some help in that secondary. And when you have some big guys like Odell Beckham, the Redskins don't have any weapons. And then, the Eagles, who have a decent offense, it is going to be a little bit difficult, especially in the NFC as a whole, to not have a good secondary. So that's somewhere where the Dallas Cowboys definitely need to shore up on. But I see the Cowboys making a little bit of a resurgence this year. Now, the Washington Redskins. Now, I want to say the Redskins probably got the offseason deal of the year when they got Alex Smith for a relatively low price as well. Considering how much Kirk Cousins went for and how hot and cold he is, obviously the Redskins aren't going to pay him that money, but instead they got Alex Smith, who I think is a more steady passer. He's not great with the deep ball, but he's really not going to lose you any games. Now, as I was saying before, they were really going to have to rely on Geis, their newly acquired running back, but unfortunately he is injured. He's out for the year. And so now I really don't know what they do, considering that the main guy that they're going to be leaning on is Jordan Reed, and that guy can't really seem to stay healthy. And so with Alex Smith, I think he'll be relying a lot on Jordan Reed. Their defense is okay, depends on their health, but he really doesn't have a ton of targets to throw the ball to. They signed Terrell Pryor last year. That didn't go really well. So I just see this offense as being super, super stagnant and not really being able to get it done. And plus, you have a guy behind center who can't really move the ball downfield. It's going to be difficult for the Redskins to compete this year, in my opinion. Now, the team that I think is the most improved in the NFC East is the New York Giants. Obviously, drafting Saquon Barkley, who is already, people are already giving this guy, he's in the Hall of Fame already. I don't care if he's only had 2 snaps. Good for him. But it's not just the running game where they are going to be drastically improving, and they're also going to use Barkley in the passing game as well. But they finally shored up that offensive line, so it seems like the front office for the Giants has finally forgiven Eli Manning for whatever he did and getting murdered every single year after year. So they got Will Hernandez in the second round, who's supposed to be one of the best guards in the draft, and they also got Nate Solder from the Patriots, who is a huge signing for them, gave him a ton of money, but that will make that pass rush, a pass rush at least a little bit more tolerable for Eli Manning so he can hold on to the ball for a little bit longer, and it's going to open up some running lanes for Barkley as well. So I think he'll do well with that. In addition, Eli Manning is going to get Odell Beckham Jr. back. He has Shepard, so they got people to throw the ball to. So I think this offense is going to be a lot better than it was last year, but it is all going to lie on the shoulders of Eli Manning. So it's going to be interesting to see because the Giants, they could have drafted one of the top signal callers, one of the top quarterbacks from the draft, but they instead decided to go with running back and hold on to Eli Manning for at least another year. So it's going to be interesting to see if that's going to come back and bite them. They got Alec Ogletree from the Rams. They also, of course, have Collins, who's an amazing defensive player. So that defense should be a little bit better. I really see the Giants bouncing back here and doing pretty well in the East. So that being said, let's break it down and where you think these are going to end up. I think the Eagles should remain on top in the NFC East because their team really hasn't fluctuated a whole lot. They've gotten some decent weapons over the offseason. The defense makes me a little bit nervous, but overall, I think, especially if Carson Wentz is able to come back and continue the MVP-like season he was having last year, they should be completely fine. So I think the Eagles will finish number 1. I think the Giants are going to make a huge comeback and go from the basement to number 2. I see the Cowboys going to number 3 just because of some of the lack of the targets that they have on the offense. And I see the Redskins with this stagnant offense just being at number 4. I just really don't have a lot of faith in the Redskins. Their defense, while decent, doesn't really impress me a whole lot, and I really just don't know what they're going to do on offense. I don't know how they're going to score. But let me know what you think down below. I'm curious to see, do you agree with how I'm going to rank them? It should be an interesting division. I could definitely see 2 teams potentially going to the playoffs from the East, but we'll see. And I think what we can all agree upon, regardless, is that I'm just so happy that the first Sunday Night Football game is not the Giants and Cowboys, because good God, I was so sick and tired of seeing that every single season. So at least we have that, people. You could always find me at TomGrossiComedy.com, TomGrossi Comedy, or Tom Grossi Comedy on the Twitters and the Instagrams and the Facebook. Check out my debut comedy album coming out August 24th. Super happy about it. Allergic to Fun. You can pick it up on iTunes, Amazon, or a physical copy on TomGrossiComedy.com. So check that out. Much appreciated. People are pre-ordering it already, and I love you. If you also want to support, I'm running the New York City Marathon in 3 months. If you want to support, I'm running for Parkinsons research. You can check that out in the description as well. So thank you so much for watching. This week, right now, actually, when this video is going up, I am going to be interviewing the president, Mark Murphy, of the Green Bay Packers. So that will be fun. That interview will be up next week, as well as the NFC North video. But thank you so much for watching. I'm Tom Grossi. And as always, go Pack Go.